corporate state. When in 1970 Theodore Roszak looked back approvingly over that decade, he described the many developments he applauded as responses to the technocracy. This, echoing Weber, was described as corporate power combined with a state of mind according to which the requirements of our humanity yield wholly to some manner of formal analysis which can be carried out by specialists possessing certain impenetrable skills, which can then be translated by them directly into a congregaries of economic and social programs, personal management procedures, merchandise, and mechanical gadgetry. These experts to be found at the corporate center believe that most human needs had been filled where there was a problem. It was a result of a misunderstanding. In different ways, Roszak claimed the poetry, literature, sociology, political tracts, and demonstration of time challenges technocratic presumption. In this respect, the politics of the decade was but one part of a general revolt against rationality, whether in challenges to bureaucracy and scientific expertise or in hedonistic lifestyles and the disparagement of conventional careers. Claims of objective knowledge were distrusted. Instead of worldviews being shaped by the accumulation of knowledge, knowledge always deserved quotation marks reflecting an underlying worldview rather than actual reality. What does this mean for strategy? At a general level, a challenging idea of strategy based on not only the presumption of choice but also the availability of methods for choosing well, which included the need to pay close attention to the operating environment and think ahead. In some respects, liberalism, as it had developed through the 20th century, could pride itself on having created the optimal conditions for strategy making. The right of free political expression, the ability to organize, and respect for the scientific method as a means of bringing clarity to choice and thinking through consequences. Now the New Left appear to see this approach as problematic, a form of thinking that constrained the range of choice and excluded those affected by decisions from contributing to the resolution, and a stress on organization, which meant hierarchy. It could also be the case that there was little point in worrying too much about relating ends and means because of the utter hopelessness of the strategic task in the face of complacent majority culture. The aspirations of the young radicals were beyond the scope of rational planning. Not surprisingly, therefore, a strategy of absolute ends emerged, heroic and romantic, doomed to fail, but magnificent in its ambition and noble in its honesty. The aim was to affirm existence rather than realize goals, and in this, there was a nod across the Atlantic to the French existentialists with their deep musings about the human condition, full of absurdity, abandonment, and despair, but also stressing the unavoidability of choice. Jean-Paul Sartre might seem to dwell on the utility of action, but his point was that hopelessness was not in itself a reason for passivity. Indeed, the choice was unavoidable for men who were condemned to be free. They did not choose the circumstances of their existence, but they were obliged to respond. The quality of their responses, whether heroic or cowardly, was a responsibility and would eventually define their lives. More influential than Sartre, at least in the United States, was Albert Camus. Politically, Camus was closer to the anarchist than the communist. And his strong anti-Soviet views caused a break with Sartre. In 1940, he was a pacifist, but the experience of occupation led him to join the resistance, eventually The Underground Journal Combat. This was the inspiration for his allegorical 1947 novel, The Plague. As a plague most overwhelmed the Algerian city of Oran, the citizens were in denial, and then instead of abandoning hope, the community found a way of defeating the disease and regaining its solidarity in the process. The Dr. Bernard Rick summed up the philosophy. All I maintain is that on this earth there are pestilences and there are victims. It's up to us as far as possible not to join forces with the pestilences. All I maintain is that on this earth there are pestilences and there are victims. It's up to us as far as possible not to join forces with the pestilence. From Camus came the argument that rebellion made a life worth living, even when this meant acting in the face of overwhelming odds. So long as one was acting with integrity, there was no need to worry about being an underdog, for integrity mattered more than consequences. C. Wright Mills died of a heart attack in his mid-40s in 1962. Mills was controversial at the time and has remained so since, not least because of his larger-than-life personality and his readiness to cast himself as a dissident. He was a classic inner-directed man, true to his own values, describing himself as a loner who never worked with a political group. The early years of his career saw him subjected to three influences, two of which remained critical for his own ideas. The pragmatists were the first influence and the subject of his doctorate. He shared their belief in the public role of intellectuals. There was an affinity with James' anti-militarism and Dewey's advocacy of participatory democracy. At the same time, Mills was skeptical of Dewey's quasi-scientific framework and over-mechanical view of politics. His reluctance to come to terms with the problem of power and to acknowledge its manipulative, emotional, cohesive elements. Yet Mills also appreciated